Paul Di'Anno, the original frontman of Iron Maiden, has passed away at the age of 66. A statement from his family, released through Conquest Music, confirms the loss of a man who, despite being plagued by health struggles in his final years, performed over 100 shows since 2023. The metal community mourns deeply, but Paul's legacy, it lives on, forever immortalized in the power and grit he gave the genre. But Paul Di'Anno was more than just a voice. His life was a story of triumph, conflict, survival, and ultimately, resilience. From his rise to fame with Iron Maiden to the personal demons that threatened to pull him under, Paul's life was one of dramatic highs and crushing lows, making him one of the most complex and beloved figures in the world of heavy metal. Paul Andrews, born in East London on May 17, 1958, was a product of his environment, a tough, working-class kid from Chingford. He was raised in a home where resources were scarce, but attitude was never in short supply. Paul had a rough childhood, dealing with family struggles and finding himself constantly at odds with authority. But these hardships molded him into a fighter. He would later say that the adversity he faced during his youth gave him the grit to survive in the cutthroat music industry. As a teenager, Paul found solace in the punk scene of the late 1970s, a genre as rebellious and uncompromising as he was. Punk rock was a perfect fit for his aggressive personality, but his vocal talent extended beyond the raw sound of punk. His voice carried a unique blend of fury and emotion that would set him apart from the average frontman. It was in 1978, at just 20 years old, that fate stepped in. Paul auditioned for a new heavy metal band that was still trying to find its footing, Iron Maiden. Little did he know, this audition would change his life and the face of metal forever. Iron Maiden wasn't yet the household name we know today. In 1978, they were still an underground band, hungry for success. Paul, with his rebellious attitude and unmistakable voice, was the missing piece of the puzzle. He had a ferocious energy that resonated with the band's heavy, fast-paced sound, and together, they quickly took the world by storm. Their debut album, Iron Maiden, 1980, was revolutionary. Songs like Running Free and Phantom of the Opera cemented Di'Anno as one of metal's most dynamic vocalists. His vocals were gritty, raw, and filled with the kind of passion that metal fans crave. He wasn't just singing the songs, he was living them. And then came Killers, 1981, an album that many consider one of the greatest heavy metal records of all time. Tracks like Wrathchild and Murders in the Rue Morgue showed that Paul wasn't just another metal frontman, he was the embodiment of the genre's rebellious spirit. But the rapid rise to fame wasn't easy. Paul was young, and suddenly, he was thrust into the global spotlight. The fame, the pressure, the relentless touring, it all started to take its toll. And for Paul, who had always been a bit of a lone wolf, the demands of the band's skyrocketing success were suffocating. By 1981, cracks were beginning to show in Iron Maiden's relationship with Paul Di'Anno. Reports of friction between him and the band's leader, Steve Harris, began to surface. Di'Anno's heavy drinking and drug use became well documented, and rumors of missed shows and lackluster performances started to swirl. Paul, ever the outspoken rebel, wasn't one to shy away from addressing the issues. "It wasn't my voice," he told Rock Hard magazine in 2022. "I was just upset about certain things in the band. The way I dealt with them wasn't right, but I dealt with them the only way I knew how." The truth was, Paul was struggling. The sudden fame, the intense touring schedule, and the personal demons he'd carried from his troubled childhood were beginning to overwhelm him. And in 1981, after just 3 years and 2 albums, Paul was replaced by Bruce Dickinson, a move that would alter the course of both Iron Maiden's and Paul Di'Anno's futures. For Iron Maiden, Dickinson's arrival marked a new era, one that would lead to global superstardom. But for Paul, it was the end of his time with the band that had made him famous, and the beginning of a tumultuous solo career. After leaving Iron Maiden, Paul Di'Anno embarked on a solo career, fronting bands like Battlezone and Killers. But unlike the meteoric rise of Iron Maiden, Paul's post-Maiden journey was marked by struggle. His solo work received critical acclaim but never quite achieved the commercial success of his Maiden days. Paul's rebellious nature and love for the punk ethos led him to embrace the underground scene. While Iron Maiden was selling out arenas worldwide, Di'Anno was playing smaller venues, but always giving it everything he had. For his fans, Paul's authenticity was part of his appeal. He wasn't chasing the fame or the fortune, he was doing it for the love of the music. Still, the personal struggles that plagued him during his time in Iron Maiden didn't disappear. Paul continued to battle his demons, and health issues started to take a toll. By the 2000s, he was facing multiple health complications, including serious knee issues that eventually confined him to a wheelchair. But in true Di'Anno fashion, he refused to give up. Even while battling severe health problems, Paul continued to perform. Between 2023 and 2024, he played over 100 shows, performing from his wheelchair but still delivering the raw energy that had made him famous in the first place. His fans saw this as the ultimate act of dedication. Paul was a fighter, through and through. In September 2024, Paul Di'Anno released The Book of the Beast, a career-spanning retrospective album that highlighted his work post-Iron Maiden. The album was a labor of love, a chance for Di'Anno to look back on his career and remind the world of the impact he'd had on heavy metal. But behind the scenes, his health was deteriorating. He had been open about his struggles with sepsis and other health complications, but even those close to him didn't realize just how dire the situation had become. On October 21, 2024, Paul Di'Anno passed away at his home in Salisbury, surrounded by family. The world mourned the loss of an icon. Fans from all over the globe shared tributes, remembering the raw power of his voice and the rebellious spirit he embodied. For many, Paul wasn't just a singer, he was a symbol of perseverance, someone who faced countless challenges but always found a way to keep going. Even as Iron Maiden's success skyrocketed after his departure, Di'Anno's influence on the band's early sound was undeniable. Without him, those first two albums might not have had the same impact. Paul Di'Anno was Iron Maiden in its most raw, unfiltered form. Paul Di'Anno's story is one of resilience. From the tough streets of East London to the stages of the world's biggest rock festivals, he lived a life filled with music, rebellion, and passion. His voice was the soundtrack to a generation of metal fans, and even in his final years, he never stopped doing what he loved. Paul's journey wasn't easy. He faced more than his fair share of hardships, from addiction and health problems to the pressures of fame. But through it all, he remained a fighter, a man who refused to be defined by his struggles and instead chose to live life on his own terms. If Paul Di'Anno's story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe for more documentaries on the legends of music. What was your favorite Di'Anno track? Share it in the comments below.